Are we all here?
We have a second mic.
Yeah. Okay. So we've reached our second session for today. In the morning, we've heard about some thoughts and ideas and projects that are happening around organizational experimentalism from a technological perspective. But I invite right now Fanny Hook and Mohamed Frini to share with us alternative modes of circulations that they've been thinking about, they've been experimenting with, practices that are embedded in your own context, and in what Beccolo has said would help us attune to the emotional and political landscape and the people that they inhabit. It sticks, yeah, we're working with it. And I would also invite you to also touch on the insights, the ideas and thoughts that we heard and we kind of gathered from our meetings for the past 2 days. Also to think and explore models of organization and cooperation that you have experimented or you experience yourself that could help strengthen and sustain the work that we're doing on the ground and how we can expand it beyond our institutions, beyond our to other communities that are doing the same work or similar work as us. So I will just start by briefly introducing the speakers. Mohamed Frini, he took on the challenge of giving art house films access to as many screens as possible across the country in Tunisia, in a context where cinema theaters were closing and the public had almost no access to art house film screenings. In 2013, he co-founded the first distribution company specializing in art house films, Hakka Distribution. He runs 2 art house cinemas, Amilcar in Tunis since 2015, and Le Métropole in Menzel Bourguiba, which reopened in March 2019. He's also the founding president of the Echo Cinématographique Association. It's an association active in promoting cinephilia for marginalized audiences since 2017. And Fanny Hook, for the past 10 years, Fanny has been contributing in the production of national and international feature and short films, reality series, investigative reports, advertisement, and theater production. Her love for films led her to serve as the programming manager for the International Film Festivals of Panama for 6 years. And she can also be credited with the contributions to other film festivals such as Panalandia, the Panama Animation Film Festival, and Visible LGBTQ+ Film Festival. She was featured by Screen International magazine in the Future Leaders 2019 article under the programming sector and curation. She's also the co-founder of La Subterránea. Am I getting the?
La Subterránea.
La Subterránea. A Panamanian film distribution agency that aims to promote and discuss independent Latin American and Caribbean films, and expand the cinema experience outside the city limits by sharing it with the communities through alternative screenings. Without further ado, I give the floor to you two.
Thank you, Sabine, for that introduction, and thank you to the whole team for such a fantastic experience. I know I've said this many times and you're probably tired of hearing it, but this is like a dream, like I was telling Laura, just to imagine how to be in a place where people have the same intention, to rethink what we are doing, even the necessity of it. One of the reasons why I ended up doing it in the first place. Panama is a small country in Central America with a new audiovisual industry. Recently, we managed to get a film fund to produce more films. So it's now being a good opportunity to take those films into other spaces. Because I've been working in film festivals like Mohamed, as well as something that we shared, we realized that the films, well, I realized that the films that were available were always from the same space, like big studios and in the same spaces, the mall. In Panama, we don't have independent cinemas to see other kinds of content. Also, Panama was for a long period part of governed, the Panama Canal was governed by the United States, so the content that we consume is mostly from the United States. So all images, not just films, but TVs, and then with internet, the tendency of consuming images from these places was even bigger. And there was a need to see other things. There was a need to see films from other countries, see other perspectives, and with the festivals, that opportunity grew. It was all possibilities, all stories, all countries. And I wondered, why can't we just do this all year? Realized that the infrastructure for having a festival going on for a whole year is impossible. So that was one of the parts that made me take the distribution route other than the production route. How about you, Mohamed?
Thank you all for being here. We had a very interesting exchange with Fanny. As distributors, we share the same essential questions. I think that every distributor in the world has to face this struggle Fanny talked about of industry films being having the most of the power of being screened and independent movies that have to always find a way to reach the people. As we are also from countries of what we call the southern countries, we have also to face other problems like challenges like lack of cultural activities, lack of cultural spaces, difficulties with the state, etc. We had to share many, we are sharing many essential questions regarding this. Fanny, how do you came up with, why do you go outside when you are doing your work of distribution? Why do you go outside the big cities, the capital, where you will find all the cinema spaces, and you will find easily a way to reach people, but you go beyond these cities? Why to go elsewhere, where it's more difficult?
It's funny that you asked that, and then for the sake of this conversation, and we want to be very, very specific, we talked for days about all the things that distribution has, all the things that we don't like. But we're going to focus on the ones that we do, that we think that work, that we think we want to continue to do. And one is that taking cinemas outside of the city. City in Panama has everything, all the cultural activities, all the cinemas, all the spaces that are creative. And because I was searching for stories of Panama, I wonder if those can be produced elsewhere. So because I am part of a collective called Mente Pública, excuse me, they produce a small short film festivals, a festival for short films under budget, and they make workshops for 10 years this year. They have 10 years this year, but for 6 or 5, they did everything in the city. So all of the activities were there, concentrated. And it was a chance, an opportunity to take those workshops outside of the city and make activities there and have people producing there content that is from there and then also consumed there. And once that started happening, I realized, well, we all realized that the need of it. So ever since, we've been touring other spaces further away from the city and realizing that these networks that are being created around outside of the city are basic and vital, don't you think?
Yes, I think that, as you said, it's essential to go beyond those spaces, and network is the key. When we started, it was for us as a distributor a challenge because in the capital we had only access to 3 screens to show our movies. It was really important movies that can be watched by tens of thousands of people in Tunisia, but with only 3 screens, it was really difficult. So that's what led us to go outside these screens. Fortunately, in Tunisia, we had another kind of spaces instead of cinema houses, which is something we call the culture houses. Spaces that are equipped more or less for screening. You find the seats and the screens in almost 100 spaces all around the country. But the problem is that these spaces are not well managed, not well curated. So for the most, they are totally inactive. And for the rare of them who were active, it was not so accurate. Their programming was not accurate regarding cinema. So it was an opportunity to us to go to these spaces. The first challenge was how to deal with these spaces that are run by the government. Because in Tunisia, if, for example, you go to the Ministry of Culture and ask for an authorization to make an activity in one of these spaces, it could take you several months, and you are not sure to get this authorization. So instead of that, what we learned by experience is to go meet people directly. For example, the first person I met outside the capital was a director that I get to know, director of one of these culture houses, and his job was to overcome, to deal with all these procedures that we couldn't deal with. So that led me to look for other people in other cities. Everywhere I go, I found someone from the city who is interested in our activity and partnering with us, and he knows how to deal locally with this problem. Because when you go outside the big cities, the state is not as strong as it is in big cities. So there, the relationship, the direct relations with people are stronger than the administrative path. We never deal with the state. That's what I said to Fanny, because in all our experience, 9 years of experience, we had never been helped by the government. But instead of that, the only function of the governments, sadly, of our I think of the world, because I don't see any government in the world that is aware of the cultural necessity. More or less in rich countries you will find people who had the ability to do things, to make things moving, but normally the state is not in our side. So we had to overcome this, and in Tunisia what works well, and I think it could work elsewhere, is to go meet the people directly and find solutions with them. So it started with that idea, and then it slowly became a network. When you have one partner in one city, then a second one, then a third one, then it became to be an organized network where we learn from local practices of one partner that we can give to other partners. So it became like a participative organization. So to be more specific, what we do is when you find a local partner, he will deal with the local authorities. Also, he will hire people to do the local communication campaign of the movie, to do the selling of the ticket, and an important part of the work, also the people who will work as technicians during the projection of the movie. All of them are locals. So we, as a distributor, we only have to bring the movie, and everything is done locally, and that gave us the opportunity to do a big tours for movies. Like we had several times more than 100 screenings of a movie outside the cinemas and outside the big cities, only by relying on local partnerships.
It's not easy. It's not easy to do all of that. We don't necessarily have that model, but we take some of that. For example, in the screenings that are outside of the city limits, we partner with other cultural people that are doing things and help us, but they don't produce the event. They help us. And maybe we should consider that, like we were talking, in a different way. What we do, the things that we do are alliances. So what we are doing is connecting the film, which is the most important part, and the subjects that the film touches, to groups, organizations, associations that have the same interests or are already organized to discuss those subjects. For example, with Aurora, the latest film that we released is a film about a young girl that is pregnant, and a woman, older 40-year-old woman, that wants to help her out, but it's not her mother. So the whole concept of being pregnant is already being dealt with other associations, like Planned Pregnancy Foundation. I'm translating in my mind, but it's an association that works teenagers to plan pregnancies for girls and for men. There's also associations that care for human rights, associations that care for young people, orphanage, and we ally with them so that we can either pre-sell tickets as groups or help distribute tickets. We also partner with corporations, private businesses, to fund tickets to audiences that will take benefit for a specific subject that is dealt in a movie. In the future, we are releasing another film that is in the art sector, and there are other groups that we are allying to make an exponential audience, increase in the audience. And those alliances are vital, because we know we don't have consumption of independent films yet. That only happens once a year. Like there's a festival and people go see something different. Because they are not available in the movies, people don't want to go and see them. We had a very interesting conversation about marketing and how people are engaged into a film and want to see a film. But if there is an interest already in the alliances, in a group of people, in a network that is created towards the subject that the movie speaks, then it's easier to invite people and reproduce that idea so that other people want to go watch the movie. So that has worked. And new and creative ideas continue to happen as we do it, because we find new, interesting people, just like those partners that you were talking about, that are very tuned into what we want to do. There are other tools that I can imagine. Do you imagine other strategies that do work other than the partnerships and the alliances?
Yes, the biggest part of our work is strategy, I think. So the viability you are talking about is a central matter. In our work, we rely mostly on ticketing, ticket sales, because it's the only way to guarantee sustainability of our work. That's how we see things, because through funding you can have some help in a particular moment, but nothing guarantee that you will have this fund forever. So if you want a sustainable project, you have to rely on ticketing. So it was a challenge at the beginning, because as you said, when you go to somewhere where there is no cultural activity, it's difficult to make people interested by independent movies. Fortunately, what we had in the last years in Tunisia was like a rise of cinema production. So we had almost every year like 2 or 3 big releases of Tunisian movie, and that helped very strongly our work, because I think that the cultural proximity is a key point when you want to, for example, find your way where only the Hollywood movies succeed. If you want to propose something that can be as attractive for people as that, you can rely on the cultural proximity. I mean that Hollywood movies doesn't speak Tunisian, so that's our biggest strength. So you have films that speaks the language of people and talks about their real matters in life. So the strategy that we used was to rely on these strong movies to create habits, so people can after that come for more fragile movies. So when you go to somewhere, you do, for example, 10 screenings, and people gets the habit to go to the culture house to watch a movie. Then after that, it will be easier for you to make like a cine club screening of an author movie coming from another country which is not Tunisian. Also, as a strategies, we made several actions. The first one was to go knock on all the doors and looking for people who are interested to work with us. For the first movie, for example, when we were preparing the release, I took a car and went around the country. I met probably 60 people, and I had maybe 5 or 6 partners who accepted to work with us. And then when these events were successful with 6 people, other ones opened up and were interested by collaborating. At the beginning, we relied on a fund that was locally existing in the collectivities, local collectivities, a fund for culture. There were local commissions, but these commissions were shut down totally. It existed in all the countries. That's why I say it's not healthy to rely on funding. So we found a new way of funding our screenings, which was through ticketing and allowing a local partner to get a part of the revenues of the movie. And that is very important because these partners know how to sell tickets in their neighborhood, in their region. And they can do the biggest part of the work, and they will earn money. So that created the strong motivations for many people all across the country to work with us and to work on movies, even if at the first they were not really interested by the cultural field, but that led us to make successful events of cinema all throughout the countries, organized by locals, and an important part of the money stays there, and it was sustainable for us also.
That doesn't work for us at all. Tickets are not where we get money from. Definitely not funding either. It's hard. Maybe the funding to make the movie, that works. But to have a place to screen, and even that permits to access a space that is public, that is governmentally administered, there is a lot of bureaucracy involved, and it's very hard, and it's time consuming, and it's hard. Where we've realized there is an income is in other activities. Just like the regular movie theaters do now, is on the snacks, is on the food, is in what's happening with the movies, that the director is coming, is it there's a party, is it there is what's going on in this space, and how is that space comfortable, why people want to be there, what's happening in there, what made them be there in the first place, those alliances that we were talking about at the beginning. Just if I'm talking about abortion, and I have a parade the day that we commemorate the day of the prevention of pregnancies in teenagers, which is not what happened, but is an example, then you'll know that everyone in the room, or most of the people in the room, are interested in this subject. You'll do something for them. You'll do something that is exciting to them. If it's an art movie, then you do an art exhibition, or a dance, or a theater play, or something. And then make sure that people come first, like ticketing, it's like to access. Sometimes it's free when, and the activities that we've done with Panalandia, and Visible, which is an LGBTQ plus film exhibition, or Cine Negre, which is a Afro-Caribbean film exhibition circuit. So all of the films, which is the most important part, are selected towards that audience first. In La Subterránea, which is the agency, we make sure that we choose only films that are aligned to that criteria, to that editorial line, and that's the public that we want to hit, and then we'll create activities around that. And how to call them also is very important. If we are going to outside of the city and we know that they don't communicate, or they don't relate to TV, then we'll do radio, or we'll go around in those little trucks that I told you about, that we have in all Latin American countries, and I don't know if in Europe or in other countries they do have, but there's trucks that collect recyclables. So in Panama, is a man with a microphone going like, you never understand what they're saying, but just picking your recyclable things. And then we use that megaphone to invite people to come to our spaces. Or if it's a poster in a place where people walk, then a poster. But it's always different towards the audience that we are trying to engage. And it's an exercise, because you have to be very creative. Then they'll know the trick and be like, I don't know if the movie has to be great, the conversation has to be great, then the food has to be great. Otherwise, they'll go outside, just like Jean-Pierre was saying, and they'll go to be pretty in the show and watch the show and then don't watch the movie. And it's a whole process thinking towards every activity and how to engage the audience in those activities. Those are tools that we like, and as opposed to the ticketing, like you have an advantage. We were discussing that earlier, how it's so great to have so many screens that are available and what we can take back from that. We wish we could do like a simultaneous screening experience. Like maybe you can tell us a little bit about how that worked for you and how that's a different tool and how that worked for those set of screens that you have available.
Yes, in fact, we are a team of, for the diffusion outside in the regions, we are a team of 3 persons. We can do for a single release in in a few weeks, 100 screenings only with being 3 persons on board. And this is on relying on partners with who we worked several times. So this kind of work with partners was really interesting, and we were able to do hundreds of screenings with a small team, and bringing cinema to places where there were no cultural activities or cinema. Also for some places where you don't have this cultural house, you have, for example, no cultural house, no theater house. We also went to schools, universities, and with the same logic. You go to a university, you find a group of students who are active in this university, which is in a small city, and this group runs a club, and for them it's very interesting to be able to screen a movie that has just been released in a national release. So they will find a way they will find the screen, they will find the projection machine, the data show, they will find how to equip the space, and they will get money from that. So even in spaces out who are not equipped for cinema, there are some solutions. Also, we make some associative actions that make us go outside these spaces. For example, we went to the I don't know how to say universitary dormitories for girls. I don't know if it's clear for everyone. So we had once a movie that was about the subject of that was a story of a girl being sexually aggressed in a police station that were trying to get back her rights and make a trial against the aggressors. So this movie was so important because it was so important because the situation of this girl, which is a student living far from her home, and having to face alone this problem with policemen. So it was, in addition to being a very interesting movie and important movie that we wanted to show, it was also a case study, very interesting to make an action to inform all the student girls of the country on how you can react in this kind of situation. What is the law? What are the mistakes that you don't that you should avoid? What are the associations that can help you? Their contacts, etc. So with this idea, we were able to make 50 screenings accompanied by associative activists who interacted with, and we went in girl dormitories. Only it was an action for girls. And the opening of the action, we succeeded to have access. It was an exceptional period to get access to the women jail. So the first screening we made it in the jail with women that have, for some of them, to face these kind of problems, or who knew someone who faced these. And we were with very well accompanied with 2 or 3 feminist associations that were really strong and active in Tunisia, and we had a very strong start for this activity. And in addition to be useful in the community, also it gave us the opportunity to go to spaces where we are not able to go, to show the movie for people who had no access to the cinema, with a very small financing, because we had the ability through partnerships to do this with very small financing.
We always go back to the film. The film is so important. What film is going to be chosen by what organization? So maybe in Tunisia at that moment in the world clearly, but that movie was released, made by a community of people that needed to communicate that message. There's an audience that wants to see that movie and discuss that movie. It's not just making the film, but tailoring when, how, and who is going to see it. So the tools that we've learned in the process of circulating films and trying to find those audiences, we've discovered that promoting the film and talking about the film and writing about the film and describing the film and creating activities around that film is sometimes a joint task if the production team agrees to help, if they are part of that logic and they agree with you. Sometimes they don't. And they have a different vision of why they made the film in the first place. And the convincing part of what we think people will, what's the message in this film that is important to connect with that relevance, with that moment in that space, perhaps is different from the motivation of the author in the first place. And that's sometimes hard to deal, sometimes easy because we agree. And then when we do, it's more, there is usually a more successful experience. But in our case, in La Subterránea, which is a small emerging distributing agency, we are still trying to select films that are far away from what is available to entertain in the country. We don't want to go see The Fast and the Furious number 79. We probably there's something great in it that some audiences enjoy and want to continue to see. But in the relevance of the editorial line and the spaces that we inhabited, that we want to share films with, that's not one option. We want to talk about segregation, we want to talk about women's rights, we want to talk about infant treatment, human rights, we want to talk about water and water use, energetic, new investigations, we want to talk about corruption, we want to talk about other things that the other authors, perhaps not in my country, are talking about. How to circulate those ideas, those stories, regardless of the countries that those are made, and have the audience that I already know that will enjoy or talk about that, come and gather, pay to see, consume a drink, so that we can continue to do this. It's a loop that we haven't yet discovered how efficiently to improve. But I am here to talk to each of you, and I've collected so many great ideas. The possibilities are endless. With new technologies, probably also disadvantages. But the excitement of being part of the discussion, as we all discover how it's going to work, is where we want to be, so that if there's something useful, apply it on time, and if there's something we should avoid, see it coming and divert, go in a different direction. I think those from the exercises that we've done today, going back to what Sabine was saying, how to apply this into circulation and meeting producers, meeting directors, meeting content creators, meeting artists here, how does that apply to making a film available in a different audience? And it's about network. It's about the film first, or the theater piece, the story, the art piece, or the whatever image, moving image it is first. Who chooses that and why? And then when and how it's going to be circulated. That's going to be changing, because we're going to continue to meet people, how to make those connections more efficient, and how to make sure that the ideas that other people have can be applied in both sides. Because if I meet Sabine and she wants to do something in Savi, how is that going to relate to the author? Because I can just give you the film. You'll play the film, and people will see the film and be like, yep, I saw a film once in Savi. That's not what we want. We want to make sure that people say, there is this woman that makes art with recyclables in Panama in a place called Paritilla. That's interesting. You need to see this art that this woman makes in this space. And then somebody that makes art is inspired by that piece of art by a woman of 96 years in a little town in Panama, which can relate to somebody doing it in Namibia, who knows? And how to connect those networks is what I see a potential in being improved with these new technologies. I don't know the rest, because I can think of other things like storage and privacy protection and transparency. There's a lot of doubts. We were talking about how people see distributors or villains that want to take your money and then don't care about the film. Perhaps that happens with the Fast and the Furious number 79, because they own, like, you know, a lot more about how big corporations handle their film creation, but it's not the case of art house films or independent small films. So we rely on these connections, on these gatherings, in these network events to make sure that the essence of the author is through the experience of exhibiting, and not just this idea of an entity that wants to make a profit out of somebody else's art.
I wanted to see if there's anybody, if anybody wants to ask a question or react.
Hi, both. Thank you very much. Me again. I just want to pick up on something that I feel is relevant between what you're both saying and what Jean-Pierre was saying yesterday. And also just ask a kind of provocative question about a seeming contradiction in the stories that we've heard. Jean-Pierre yesterday was talking about relevance, right? The relevance of the filmmaker and the relevance of the film as a cultural artifact, especially today when everybody has a camera. But at the same time, Jean-Pierre was saying to us that not every image is a film, right? So there's that distinction. And I felt that there was a slight contradiction in the idea that in order to get people into a film screening, there needs to be an experience alongside that, and there needs to be a different kind of consumption that happens at the same time. So in a way, what you were saying was the film is not enough, that there has to be an experience or a relationship, an event, an association, a partnership, liaison, whatever, related to the film in order to get people involved. But at the same time, the film itself is important because you need to use the content or the story or the idea or the message of the film in order to make it somehow relevant to a specific community and therefore get them into this cycle. And I'm thinking a lot, I come from a music background and music making and distribution as well, so there was a problem that we started facing in the music industry a while back, which was the music stopped being enough. You couldn't just release an album, you had to make a video clip. And then it became that the video clip is not enough, you need to have an interesting live performance. And then the live performance wasn't enough because we can't tour bands, therefore we have to have single artists, which means you need an AV show, which means you have to develop a visual element in order to get people excited and therefore create an experience. And it feels somehow that this is a parallel problem, that we're unable to make music and let music be the thing because we need to parallel it with something else. And here it feels the same with film. You can't just make the film and let the film be because something needs to accompany it in order to make the experience. So what I wanted to ask is, how do you feel about that particular contradiction? And how much does your success then ultimately rely on local relevant production as opposed to imported relevant production? And what do you see are the kind of issues within that? Thank you.
Okay. Yes, I agree with you. We are observing this phenomenon since I think the late 80s, with the big commercial cinemas that began to sell snacks, and snacks exist before, but their business model was exclusively based on that. So that one of the big president of one of these groups said one day that we are snack sellers and movies are here to accompany snacks. That's what he said. So yes, I totally agree with you. But regarding our work, I understand you are reacting. If you are reacting about our work, I don't really understand, because the movie is absolutely the center of our work. Being distributor means you accompany a movie and make people seeing the movie. We are not ticket sellers, but we sell tickets in order to be able to work and to show other movies and to continue showing movies to people. But all our work is absolutely centered about a movie. That's how we do. Even if, for example, we did that sometimes, maybe 3 or 4 times, we used the subject of the movie to engage in some associative program. But in this case, it was at our part just to be able to screen the movie outside our limits. So to earn more screenings for the movie. But until today, our main incomes rely on the tickets. The day we will, if one day we no longer sell tickets, we will be forced to stop our activity. All our reflection is about the movie and how this movie can be interesting to our audience, nothing else.
Well, thank you for the question, because I think this is the greatest scenario to have that conversation. I think movies, cinema, altogether is a collaborative effort. Everybody has a talent. So whoever tells the story, that's their talent. The person that makes the song, that's their talent. And then we join together to make something that we all can show what we can offer to that particular idea. So it's centered in the story, in the theme, in the subject. If it's a song, it's centered in the motivation or whatever that song is talking about. What I meant about the experience is that because I come from a space where people are used to watch a soap opera instead of a movie, or where the consumption of memes or a phone or whatever is more practical or is something that people do more, we are reinventing a way to attract people to something that they said they don't want to see. If I go out and go like I said, it's because just telling them, come and watch this movie is not enough. It's not that the movie is not enough. That's why we chose the movie in the first place. We think it's great. We want to show it. There's 1,000 movies, millions of movies. We don't show millions of movies. We show 2. We chose 2 because those are the ones that resonate with the audience that we know. And these practices need to happen in order to be sustainable, because otherwise the movies are not going to be showed at all, at least not in the spaces that I am around. So what we've figured is that in a collaborative space where everybody has a talent, the songwriter or the script writer or the musician is free to create. That's enough. That's the content is out there. It's not their job to make somebody heard it, see it, go. That's somebody else's job. And that somebody else doesn't have that motivation, is not interested most of the time. If they just want to make a movie, tell that story, we are into something else. And then that's probably what our talent is. And it's not just, sometimes we doubt, I doubt all the time. Am I even good? Is it worth it? Did I choose wrong? Is this the right thing? But then I go back to, yes, it is a great thing. That's why I chose it in the first place. I want people to see it. Maybe they just didn't see it. That's why they don't know they like it. How to convince them to come in this space. And we use all these tools. These are only one, like we've discussed a few, but there are so many other tools to enjoy the gathering aspect of the film experience. If you make a song and the song is to be danced but nobody's dancing, it doesn't mean the song is not good. It doesn't mean people don't know how to dance. Maybe there's something else that is not letting that song get to their audience.
Thank you, Fanny. So we're going to take one last question because we went over the allocated time. We have many questions now. Okay, maybe we take the questions and maybe we can answer them before we get into the next game session. So we collect all the questions now and then, yeah.
me, thank you. It's just a short commentary. I think we can share experiences, but everybody is creating something from his own environment. So I think we have really these are two very different starting points of your work. Of course, both of you want to show films, okay? But I think in Tunisia, the situation is, the landscape is completely different. As Mohamed said, he is a commercial distributor in Tunis. He is doing art house films against American blockbusters. And he now wanted to go to the to the countryside, where, because there was a work before done since 50 years in Tunisia, there is some cinephilia, there are these cultural centers, there were cine clubs, and a little bit he could build on that. And there are films produced with local content, which are cinema, which are done by big filmmakers. So, and so maybe he can rely on the ticket sales maybe. And what you said, of course you have to create an event because you have also to sustain. If you cannot go with the ticketing, you know, you have to find other ways to make an income that this event can take place. Because you have the space does not exist to have to get. So I think the two experiences, we can share experiences, but I think we have always to come back to where are we coming from and what are the local habitudes. In Tunisia, people are used to see cinema more than maybe in Panama. I think this is important to, you can compare, but not always.
Thank you.
Thank you. As a follow-up also for what Khayyam was saying, yeah. I have a question for both of you, because I think, which is mainly focusing on film curating, film programming in terms of different formats. Like it's when you have a cinema, and also there is different hats. Like you have a cinema, you are working in the film distribution, and you have an art space, and there is to survive now was a physical space of film screenings and discussions, or film screenings, or different releases of film. That you have experimental films, alternative films, independent films, even that if you are in Tunis or in Egypt or in different places, and you bring films from different global souths, for example, different global south context, and you want to put them in film programming or releases. So this is a huge struggle, because I think all movie theater, the whole physicality of the movie theater is struggling, because the relationship with film becoming in a total different space. The relationship to image, the daily relationship to image, becoming in a total different space. We are not, as we are trained in film studies, that the movie theater space is a bad space where we go and all our illusions of the perfect images happening in the movie theater. This is not the case now, because people, as we discussed yesterday, also Bikulu mentioned this before, we have Netflix, we have TikTok, we have all of these daily streams of the image that keep the everyday contact of images. And actually movie theaters, even in malls, even in different spaces, is in a different, I think, struggle of also art space. For my question for you of film programming, film curating, as you have a cinema, that it's how to keep this cinema programming for the year, how you continue your year, to have film releases, to have how to find the space between the commercial and the mainstream and the more independent, so you keep the physical space working. You could program films and program discussions, and also the art space, how you could bring quite independent experimental film programming and bring audience for it. Sometimes, for example, I learn from different screenings how the experience of programming in South America, that there is always an experience of a social experience of a screen. Like when people go to watch film, and always have dinners after the screening and discussions with dinners, for example, in the art space. As not food as an art practice, as having dinner. Like having dinner and watching a film and having dinner and discuss the film and that's it. Without food as an art practice. For this, يعني I want to, if you could share more of how you, these challenges of keeping the spaces the physical spaces, keeping on with your programming, I think this could be so much helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Ali. Let's just move to the question directly.
Okay, I feel a bit oppressed. Sorry. No, I just want to say also very, very quick comment. I don't think there's a problem with thinking of cinema as an experience and building the experience for wherever you're taking the film, because I think personally cinema is a very intimate medium, it's very experiential, it's very collective, and this is what you take. So for me, I have a problem with just like viewing as this experiential medium as something that degrades the film as form, but I mean, this is me. My question is also related to programming. And I think when we are taking cinema to different communities, we're trying to program in a way where sometimes I feel could be a little bit from the outside as something that is programming for an audience that we are trying to understand. The parameters that we are working with is something that we imagine and we study and research, but most of the time, and I'm not saying this is what you're doing, most of the time it happens in very elitist, closed rooms. How do we move this experience to be a participatory one, where the audience has a voice in choosing the program, where the film is also relevant because it connects, but because it is something, it is a topic where you know this audience relates to in terms of relevance?
Excuse me, there is, in the question of Cindy, I didn't well understood there is plenty of elements. Do you have also in your strategy, do you have a way where you are factoring in conversations with the audience and having them included in the conversation that okay.
leads to programming
Yes.
at the end? So it's like moving it.
Okay. Yes. Good.
Okay. We have to move, so I want to thank you both for your precious input, and I want to thank and welcome all the questions that came. There will be plenty of time to discuss them and channel them and to get the game sessions. And just a comment on the design and on the process. There was a point in making these inputs not a discussion, or there was no Q&A planned, because we really wanted to turn off the comments in that sense. So we get an input and then we sit with our questions and then we channel them through the different sessions that were designed for that purpose. So I thank you all for your engagement and your passion, but let's move because we are way behind schedule, and let's carry this energy into the game session. Thank you. Thank you so much.